Change a question, change your life. When it comes to planning your life, I want to get you to learn to ask 3 questions now. And the first one is not, what am I going to do? The question you want to ask yourself is, what do I want? What's my outcome? What's my result? The first one is to get you focused on the target. The target is not the activity. The activity can change. It's what's the result I'm after. If you know exactly what it is you really want, what you desire, what you're really after, clarity is power. The more clear you are and specifically what you want, the faster your brain can get you there.
This episode is brought to you by RPM, the Rapid Planning Method, the system that Tony has used to not just achieve massive results in his life and create his $6 billion business empire, but a life driven by purpose, by his why. To find out more about RPM and how you can achieve more with less time, register for the RPM webinar at www.tonyrobbins.com/RPM-webinar. That's www.tonyrobbins.com/RPM-webinar.
What does it take to successfully create a lasting change in your life? The first step is you got to have a vision for what it is you really, truly want. Something has the power to pull you. Push requires willpower, and willpower never lasts. What will last is having something so exciting, so attractive, something you desire so much that you have a hard time going to sleep at night and you get up early in the morning to rock it and take it to the next level.
Welcome to the Tony Robbins Podcast. You're listening to an episode that's part of a special season where we explore the 5 areas of life that many people focus on improving at the start of a new year, like their health, productivity, personal finance, their relationships, and of course, their career. In this episode, we're taking a look at health. No matter who you are, your age, your background, it's likely that you've thought about improving your health this time of year. In fact, more than half, 55% of New Year's resolutions in the US are health-related, like exercising more or eating healthier. But what health means to you is highly personal. It's probably different from how your closest friends or your family members think about it. Maybe you're trying to lose weight or exercise more so you can fit into your clothes better or have more energy to keep up with your kids or your grandkids. Maybe you're one of the millions of Americans that are pre-diabetic and need to make major changes in your diet. Or maybe you're feeling higher levels of stress or anxiety and you want to have a healthier mindset to feel more free from worry on a daily basis. Whatever health looks like to you, one thing is for sure. Without it, you cannot make progress in any other area of your life. When your health suffers, so does everything else. Your relationships, your career, your finances, your loved ones, and your family. But with the hundreds of diets, workouts, and supplements, it can be overwhelming to figure out where to start. Living in a state of peak health has served as the foundation for Tony's success throughout his entire life, because he knows all too well that without your health, you can't perform at your full capacity. Tony's not a health expert himself, but he brings in experts to speak at his events, like world-renowned doctors and researchers, to give his audience multiple perspectives on health so they can make informed decisions about their lifestyle. Today, you're going to hear from 2 of those people, Dr. Dean Ornish, a well-known physician and researcher, and Tony's personal trainer, Billy Beck, who works with him every day as he travels the world, helping him maintain the energy he needs to serve his audience at the highest level possible. But before we hear from Dr. Ornish and Billy Beck, here's more from Tony on the mindset you need to embrace in order to do something that so many people struggle to do: lose weight and keep it off for good. While listening to this, keep in mind that this approach can apply to any goal that you set for yourself.
I have, throughout the years, defined what I think are the 6 fundamental steps that every person goes through when they successfully create a lasting change. And I call them the 6 steps of something called neuro-associative conditioning. Big words. What the heck does it mean? Well, just realize that what drives our behavior as human beings is what we associate to things in our gut, in our nervous system. But the point of the matter is we all try to avoid pain in life, and whatever we link pain to, we try to avoid being a part of. We try to avoid doing. Conversely, we all want to do something that's pleasurable. We think something is going to give us greater pleasure. That's why people smoke. That's why people overeat. That's why people drink. That's why people do a lot of things that they know intellectually are not really all that great, but we do them because it makes us feel good. And it's the best way we know on how to feel good. So all of us in our nervous system throughout our lifetimes have developed strategies on how to get out of pain and get into pleasure. Now, one of those ways in the past has been through the use of food. That's been a great way to get out of pain and into pleasure. You've given yourself that reward at times when you wanted to change your state. Just think about it. Putting food in your stomach alone changes the blood flow, changes the way you breathe, instantly changes your physiology, the sensations you begin to experience in your life. So we're not going to succeed just by overnight saying, okay, we're just going to start using willpower, or we're going to put you on XYZ diet and then everything is going to turn around. We're going to have to be much smarter than that. We've got to realize that you've created a neurological set of connections in your body, meaning your brain has learned to link this pattern, this habit, with a way of creating some of the most important sensations you could possibly experience in your life, pleasure and the avoidance of pain. So if we're going to create a change that's going to last, we've got to take you through a system that's going to help you to interrupt that pattern. That is, free yourself from that connection, because it's literally happening in your brain. It is real. It is physical. And it leads to this thing called overeating, or again, eating foods that don't support you. Step number 1 is decide, what do you really want? And what's preventing you from having it? As simple as this sounds, most people, when you ask them, what do you want in your life? They tell you what they don't want. And I got to tell you, whatever you focus on, you move towards. If you're constantly focusing on what you don't want, you constantly think about what you don't want, you get more of it. So I say to you, don't think of the color blue. Don't think of the color blue. Come on, whatever you do, don't think of the color blue. Don't think of the color blue. Well, what happens? You think of the color blue. And as you think about it, if you have emotions about blue, you feel it. Whatever you talk about, whatever you think about, whatever you focus on, you're going to move towards. I want to tell you something. I'm a strong believer. Repetition is the mother of skill. Let me tell you something. Lots of people know what to do, but they don't do what they know. If you hear something enough times, if you see it enough times, you're more likely not only to remember it, but maybe use it. And that's a critical distinction. Nothing in life is perfect, but if you do it consistently, you'll get results. It's like the law of sowing and reaping. If you sow, you'll reap, except when the winter comes so intensely too soon that it destroys your whole crop. Here I am, I planted the crop, I did everything the way I'm supposed to do it, I sowed and I didn't reap. Well, you know what? It's a long-term plan, right? If you sow consistently, you will reap consistently. There'll be a few minor exceptions. The point of the matter is this. If you say, well, one time I focused on all the good, but it still turned up bad, don't use that as an excuse not to focus on the good now. You got to consistently focus on the good. And if you focus on what you want, you're going to achieve it, because all of your resources, all that's inside of you can help you to achieve it, only shows up when you focus upon it. So the question is, what do you really want? What you really want is to be able to enjoy yourself, right? Now, what's preventing that from happening? It's because when you look in that mirror, you don't like what you see, or you don't like what you feel. You got to decide that what you want is not just to lose weight. Again, nobody wants to lose anything. What do you want? You want to be vital. You want to be free. You want to be strong. You want to look in that mirror and you want to smile broadly. You want to have pride when you're with your spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend. You want to feel like, wow, I'm proud of who I am physically, just as I am spiritually and emotionally in every other area of my life. But you must define what your target is, and it's got to be something that's compelling to you. It's got to go beyond the mere idea of, well, I want to lose 10 pounds. That's not going to inspire anybody. You must create a compelling future. You must create a clear focus as to what you do want versus what you don't want. Now, what's preventing that from happening? Obviously, what's preventing it is, in the past, your strategy for trying to make this change has required you to have pain. You had to starve. You had to give certain things up. You didn't have a new choice. Today, you might even let your mind begin to start thinking about, what do you really want? Don't just say, I want to lose 10 pounds. In a positive frame of reference, what do you want? What do you want specifically? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to create in your life that'll inspire you? Step 2 is you've got to get leverage on yourself. A lot of people in life have decided that they want to make a change, but they don't follow through, or their follow through lasts a day or a week. I don't know about you, but I used to have these deals where I'd say, okay, I'm going to go on a fast for the next 10 days and I'm going to eat nothing but water. I'm going to eat water. That's what I'm going to do. And sure enough, I'm going to lose all this weight. I'm going to get it done once and for all, take control of my life. And I had every bit of intention. I was very clear on my goal. But you know what happened about noon in the first day? I started thinking to myself, juice isn't so bad. I mean, juice is pretty good for you. And about 1 o'clock, I'm going, fruit's really good for you. And about 2 o'clock, I'm thinking to myself, a salad. Now, salad is vegetables. Vegetables are really good. And about 4 o'clock, I'd be saying a burger and fries ain't so bad. You know, the bottom line is we need to be able to stick to something once we decide on it. And that's the power of step number 2. We've got to get leverage on ourselves where our brain says to violate the standard we set for ourselves, to violate our plan equals too much pain. Way more pain than what we might be experiencing temporarily because we're focusing on food that we think we might want to have. We also have to link that making this change equals tons of pleasure. We got to remember what that vitality and energy and passion feels like.
What you just heard is an excerpt from Body You Deserve, a 10-day weight loss program that has nothing to do with shakes, calorie counting, or exercise programs. It's a program that teaches you how to take control of your own psychology so you can stop unhealthy habits where they start, your mind. To learn more, download the Tony Robbins Breakthrough app on the App Store or Google Play, where you can find Body You Deserve and other Tony Robbins products that will help you achieve lasting change in your life. Up next, we have Dr. Dean Ornish, a renowned doctor and researcher who founded the Preventative Medicine Research Institute, and who's also a clinical professor of medicine at the University of California in San Francisco. You may have seen Dr. Ornish on TV, as a guest on Oprah or Ellen, as he shares everyday diet and lifestyle changes to be healthier and to treat and prevent disease. He's also the medical editor of the Huffington Post and a regular contributor to Newsweek, Reader's Digest, among others. Dr. Ornish was also a consultant to former President Bill Clinton and was appointed by President Obama to be on the White House Advisory Group for Health. Here he is with some of his ideas on how you can improve your diet and make drastic change in both your body and your mind by making simple changes that anyone can do.
Meditation is incredibly powerful, turning on the genes that protect you, turning off the genes that are harmful. Meditation is just the practice of focusing your mind into one area. It can be a sound, a phrase, a prayer. It can be secular. It can be religious. Doesn't really matter. But when you can focus your energy, you gain more power. You know, a magnifying glass can focus the sun's rays. It can burn through a piece of paper. And a laser is just coherent light. All the waveforms are marching in step, and you can burn through steel or bounce it off the moon. It's just light. But your mind is just a form of energy as well. And your mind affects your body. And when you can focus your mind, it has a more powerful effect on your body, for better and for worse. Unfortunately, most of the time, people have the greatest focus when they're angry or afraid. And so their mind is focused, but it has a negative effect on their body. Their blood pressure goes up, their arteries constrict, their blood clots faster, their muscles tense up, and so on. But in meditation, you're meditating on something that's much more neutral or peaceful. Even the sounds of meditation all tend to sound alike. You know, the word for peace in so many cultures sounds very much the same, whether it's shalom or om or salam or amin or amen or even the word one. These words begin with an O or an A, they end with an M or an N, and they focus your mind in a very peaceful way. You know, parents, when you come to your kids, it's the same kind of intuitive understanding. And so when you can meditate, even for a few minutes a day, it quiets down your mind and body. It focuses your awareness, and so you can perform better, whether it's in school, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's in the sports arena. When you can focus better, you perform better. And meditation helps you focus better. An elite world-class level, and Tony has worked with a number of world-class athletes, the differences in physical abilities are fairly trivial. It's really a mental game at that level. And that's why most world-class athletes are using meditation and imagery, because it can actually give them a competitive advantage. We then looked at type 2 diabetes. It turns out that more than half of Americans are going to be diabetic or pre-diabetic in the next 6 or 7 years at a cost of what United Healthcare estimated to be over $3 trillion. I mean, it's crazy. Now, it turns out that lifestyle changes are actually better than drugs at preventing type 2 diabetes. There was a study that came out called the Navigator study, and they looked at what happens if you lower people with diabetes blood sugar through using 2 different drugs. And they got the blood sugar down with the drugs, thinking that would prevent the complications, but it didn't. It actually increased them. And so the editorial that accompanied the paper said, maybe we should focus on lifestyle changes because that really prevents it. Now, the complications of type 2 diabetes are truly awful, any one of which would be truly awful, but in aggregate are really awful. You know, heart disease, blindness, amputations, kidney damage, liver failure, impotence, really awful stuff. But it turns out that if you can get someone's blood sugar down through diet and lifestyle alone, you can prevent every one of these complications. The hemoglobin A1C is simply a blood test that measures your average blood sugar over the last 2 or 3 months. And if you can get that down below 7, you can prevent all of these complications. Part of what we've learned is that there's no point in giving up something that you enjoy unless you get something back that's better. And that's what we find as well, that people say, oh, when I do this, I feel good. When I do that, I don't feel so good. So maybe I'll do more of this and less of that. They can literally connect the dots between what they do and how they feel. And so then it reframes the reason for changing from fear of dying, which is not sustainable, to joy of living, which is. Because these underlying biological mechanisms are so dynamic. Most people feel so much better so quickly, it makes it sustainable. Not to live longer, although you probably will, but to feel better. When you eat healthier, when you manage stress, when you exercise, when you love more, your brain gets more blood, more oxygen, you think more clearly, you have more energy, you need less sleep. What's really cool is that there's an emerging field in science called neuroplasticity or neurogenesis. And what it means is that your brain can grow so many new brain neurons when you begin to live and eat more healthfully that your brain can actually get measurably bigger in just a few months. Isn't that amazing? And it actually gets bigger in the areas that you want it to get bigger. In your hippocampus, the part of your brain that controls memory. For example, just walking for a half hour a day or 3 hours a week caused so many new brain cells to grow that people's brains got bigger. This is published in 2 of the leading, most prestigious neuroscience journals. And as our population ages, more and more people are getting concerned about how healthy their brains are. People start to forget, like, where did I leave my keys? And what was that guy's name? Well, it turns out that a lot of that can be preventable and maybe even reversible. Just eating a lot of vegetables can reduce the likelihood of cognitive decline by 38%. Imagine if you could take a pill that would keep your brain sharp in this way. Everybody would be taking it. But again, it's just eating vegetables. Taking turmeric, which is an Indian spice, can reduce the chronic inflammation that can help prevent Alzheimer's as well. Some of my favorite foods can actually increase neurogenesis. Tea and chocolate and blueberries will make your brain grow more brain neurons, So it's not just what you exclude from your diet, but also what you include that makes it beneficial. Whereas what's bad for your heart is bad for your brain. Saturated fats and sugar and nicotine decrease neurogenesis. Believe it or not, cannabinoids found in marijuana increase neurogenesis. I'm just the messenger here. Sex actually increases neurogenesis in just a matter of weeks. Again, the primary determinant of improvement wasn't how old people were or how sick they were. It was simply a function of how much they changed their lifestyle. The more they changed, the more they improved, which is, again, a very powerful message to give people at any age. And so I came up with this idea called the spectrum. And the spectrum is based on this finding. The more you change, the better you get. And the more you change, the better you feel. And the better you feel, the more likely you are to want to keep doing it. If you go on a diet, chances are you're going to go off a diet. Diets are all about what you can't have and what you must do. And then when you go off the diet, people have those toxic emotions, shame and guilt and anger and humiliation, which really are bad for you. And once you call foods good or bad, it's a very small step to saying I'm a bad person because I ate bad food, and might as well just finish the burger at that point. It gets into this whole shame and guilt and moralistic stuff. And so I said, look, what matters most is your overall way of eating and living. Instead of saying I'm on a diet, which means you're going to get off the diet and have all those toxic feelings, to say, look, I'm going to move in a healthy direction. What matters most is my overall way of eating and living. So if you indulge yourself one day, it doesn't mean you got off the diet or you failed or you cheated or you're bad. Just eat healthier the next. You don't have time to exercise one day, do a little more the next. You get the idea. And so it's a very compassionate approach because you can't fail. There's no diet to get on. There's no diet to get off. And so I categorize foods from the most helpful, what I call group 1, to the least helpful, group 5. And group 1 are the mostly plant-based foods. Group 5 are the usual suspects, red meat and fried foods and lots of sugar and things like that. And groups 2 through 4 in the middle. So I'll say to them, okay, where are you on the food spectrum? Let's start with that. Well, they might say, I'm eating mostly unhealthy group 4 and 5 foods. So instead of us telling them what they should be doing, you, the person, tell me how much you want to change and how quickly and how many things you're willing to change. We'll support that degree of change. And then if that's enough, great. If not, you can do more. So let's say you wanted to get your cholesterol down 50 points and you're eating mostly group 4 and 5. I'd say, well, how much are you willing to change? Well, I'm not ready to go all the way to be a vegan or a plant-based diet, but I'll eat less 4 and 5 and more the healthier groups 1 through 3. Great. How much exercise are you doing? Not much. How much are you willing to do? Well, I'll walk 20 or 30 minutes a day. Great. How much yoga and meditation are you doing? Well, I'm not. How much are you willing to do? Well, I don't know. I'll meditate 10 minutes a day. And I'll spend more time with my friends and family and loved ones. I'll say, great. So we'll track it. And if then after, let's say, a month, they wanted to get their cholesterol down 50 points and it came down 30, you say, look, you're moving in the right direction. Now just go a little bit farther and you'll get the rest of the way. The same is true. So it's a very compassionate and very effective way of changing lifestyle because you can't fail. I thought it'd be worth talking about what I think is an optimal way of eating because I've been a veteran of the diet wars. And it goes something like this. There really is a convergence of what most thoughtful people think is a healthy way to eat. You want to eat mostly plants, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, soy products in their natural, unrefined forms are the healthiest way to eat. They're low in the disease-causing substances, and they have literally hundreds of thousands of protective substances, phytochemicals, bioflavonoids, carotenoids, retinols, isoflavones, genistein, lycopene, on and on and on, that have anti-cancer, anti-heart disease, and anti-aging properties. If it comes from a plant, Michael Pollan likes to say, eat it. If it's made in a plant, avoid it. And if you're going to eat meat, try to use it as flavoring rather than as a center of the plate kind of thing. You want to try to also reduce your intake of sugar. And there's been a lot of talk lately about how toxic sugar can be. And it's true, sugar and refined carbs. But as I'll talk about, it's not the whole story. It's just part of the story, but it's an important part of the story. And also you want to try to consume 4 grams a day of fish oil or flaxseed oil. My mentor when I was at Harvard was a man named Alexander Leaf, and he was the chair of medicine that became the first chair of preventive medicine. This was his pioneering work. And particularly if you have a little kid, by giving them fish oil or taking the fish oil yourself when you're growing the baby or putting it in your formula if you're not breastfeeding, which you should, or just taking it yourself, it'll end up in your breast milk. You can raise your baby's IQ from 7 to 10 points just from that alone. It's amazing. You can reduce the incidence of sudden cardiac death by up to 80%. You can reduce the incidence of prostate and breast cancer. And so that's an important thing to do. And if you can have organic is better. It doesn't have the insecticides, which we're learning now are often endocrine disruptors. They can really wreak havoc with your hormones. Now, I'd love to be able to tell you that butter and steak and meat and pork rinds and bacon and sausage are health foods, but they're not. It doesn't mean you should never eat them. It just don't kid yourself. Now, the myth is, Americans have been told to eat less fat. They're fatter than ever, so fat's not the problem. It's all sugar. Well, it turns out I was able to dig out from the U.S. Department of Agriculture database, is that really a true statement? It turns out it's not. That, in fact, Americans are not eating less fat. They're eating more fat than ever. From 1950 on, every decade, there's been a steady increase in the number, not only the amount of fat, the amount of calories, the amount of sugar, and the amount of meat and red meat. So it's not surprising why Americans are fatter than ever. It's because if you eat more calories, if you eat more fat, if you eat more sugar, and you eat more meat, you're going to gain weight. It's as simple as that. And we know that over the last 50 or 60 years, Americans are exercising a lot less as well. The real epidemic isn't just heart disease or diabetes, it's loneliness and depression and isolation. And so the unmet need in our culture is the need for connection and community. So we've kind of learned to just keep ourselves protected by keeping that wall up most of the time. But if you trust somebody, you can really open up. You can make yourself vulnerable. And to the degree you can do that, you can really have a deep connection with them. And to the degree you can do that, it's powerfully healing. And that also makes it sustainable when you have those kinds of connection. If it feels good, it's sustainable. If it's fun and you feel free, it's sustainable. If it's meaningful, it's sustainable. And if you feel a sense of love and support, that makes it sustainable. It's not just how long we live, it's how well we live. That's what makes these things worth doing. As I mentioned before, the quality of our lives goes up so much. Anything that brings us together, as I mentioned before, even the word healing comes from the root to make whole, and yoga, to yoke, to unite, to bring together. These are very old ideas. Aldous Huxley called this the perennial philosophy that you find in all the spiritual traditions and religions. Once you get past the rituals that people fight and kill each other over, altruism, forgiveness, compassion, and love, why are they so prominent in all these different religions? And the answer is because that's what heals that sense of separation. Suffering can be a powerful doorway and catalyst for transformation, for transforming our lives. Because change is hard. But if you're hurting enough and someone can get you at that moment and say, you don't have to hurt so much. And here's what you can do. I've had people say to me things like, on many occasions, having a heart attack was the best thing that ever happened to me. Or being diagnosed with cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. You go, what are you, nuts? And I'd say, no, that's what got my attention to begin making these changes in my lifestyle that have transformed it to such a degree in so many wonderful ways that I probably never would have experienced if I hadn't gotten sick. Now, of course, it's better to not have to wait till you're sick. Then you don't have to change as much, and then you don't have to go through all that suffering. But we're coming at this from different perspectives, but with the same idea, that we can use the experience of suffering as a doorway for transforming our lives for the better.
Dr. Ornish is a regular speaker at Tony Robbins' Life and Wealth Mastery Program. Set in an awe-inspiring tropical paradise, this event is designed to help you improve health and vitality, reestablish your inner balance, and master your finances too. To learn more, visit www.tonyrobbins.com/events. Have you ever wondered, how does Tony do it? He's on a plane every 3 days, traveling to events around the world, and he's on stage for 8, 10, even more hours at a time. If you've ever been to one of his events, you know that the sheer amount of energy that he brings to the audience is unparalleled. In fact, Tony burns 9,500 calories a day, which is the same as 2 marathons, and he jumps over 1,000 times on stage, the equivalent of 2 NBA games. So how is it that Tony's able to achieve peak performance even as he's getting to the life stage that most people start to slow down, and still have the energy to run a dozen companies, be present with his loved ones, and contribute substantial time and energy to the causes he cares most about? You're about to hear from Tony's personal trainer, Billy Beck, who travels the world with him. Billy is one of the world's most elite trainers and has even been elected to the Fitness Hall of Fame. Billy is interviewed by Mary Buckheit, Tony's right arm and creative partner. Billy and Mary B have accompanied Tony and Sage Robbins on the road around the world for 7 years, supporting them as they travel to events, sharing strategies for lasting change with hundreds of thousands of people in over a dozen countries each year. Here's Mary and Billy.
You are, of course, Tony's personal trainer. So you keep the big guy healthy and in top shape. And I wish I could help people understand what you really do, because Tony Robbins' personal trainer is impressive, but it still doesn't even really do it justice. Anything that he does with his big body pretty much goes through Billy Beck first. So we are all so very grateful to you, Billy. And Tony would be the first person to tell you guys this. Tony really couldn't do what he does without Billy's help. You're also Sage's trainer, and you're mine too. And I tell our listeners that on the upfront because I just want to give you guys the sense that while Billy is well known for training hulking specimens like The Rock and Vladimir Klitschko and Mr. America and Tony Robbins, he's not just all about big beef. Billy, you are also incredibly skilled, and you're able to train with precision all kinds of body types, all kinds of humans across the board. And if you have been to an event, you know it's not unusual for Tony to be on stage for like 12 hours at a time, because Billy takes care of Tony before, during, and after the event. No one knows the ins and outs of Tony and how he does it like Billy does. One topic that's kind of hot these days is the morning routine.
Oh, yeah. That's everything.
That's
right?
everything.
Yeah.
Priming him to get his body going, because as much as he's like superhuman and his mindset is always on point and he always has his purpose etched into his soul, tell us a little bit about what you do with Tony for his morning routine and you yourself, just so people get a sense of not just like the Tony Robbins model might not be for everyone, but even you, Billy Beck, what do you do? What keeps you in peak performance?
So when I wake up, I always wake up and I pray. I have a very specific way I do it. I do some breath work to get my workout started, and I set an intention when I work out. And my intention isn't like, I want to be ripped and six pack and stuff like that. That's always the side effect. If that is your main purpose for training, eventually you'll stop doing it because it won't have meaning to it at some point. Sometimes people get married, and if you're trying to attract a mate and then you get married, you're like, I don't need to do it so much. And you see it all the time, right? And you see people drop off. They gain some weight and stuff because that isn't a real purpose. You have to have a really big purpose for doing things. And my purpose is to tap into my high self so I can be my best for my family, my friends, for Tone, for you, for Sage, and for all the people at the event and everyone I bump into that day. Because if I'm off, I don't want to treat someone poorly. And that's the reason, like Tone would say, to live in a beautiful state. But that's the thing you have to train. Most people exercise is like, I have to exercise. And the difference psychologically between a child and an adult is their language in a lot of ways. So a child says, I have to do this. A lot of people talk about that with exercise. They say, I have to do this. And if I don't, I'll get fat. Or if I don't, I won't be able to eat what I want to eat. You're setting yourself up for failure there. But when you say, I choose to do this because I want to do this, because this is who I am, and I'll accept nothing less than my best. And I won't live a life of regret. When I look back on this day, I'm going to look back and be like, I gave everything I got. That's really what I think success is. And then with Tone, everything is structured. We'll wake up the big guy. Right away, I have his nutrients. So we use lab testing and muscle testing as a double check of what goes into his morning drink. That's like an adrenal support, mitochondrial support cocktail, we would call it. And that varies what's in it. Then we would use a PMF machine and a laser machine, a near infrared red light laser, That's like phase one. And then I'm working on his body. I'm balancing his muscles at the same time. We may use
using applied kinesiology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that's for a simpler term,
Okay.
but I'm like pushing on his muscles to see if they're locking in or not. If they're not locking in, I'll do something manually to get them to lock in. I'll change the tension in the muscle, or if the joint is compressed, we'll decompress the joint. This is all very precise things we're doing. And then we'll do Dr. Tennant's device. He has this device with a wand on it that resets the body. So we do that, and then we'll continue to do other body work to make sure all the muscles are firing. Then we'll eat some food. So everything's very structured in what we eat. If it's an event, we'll probably have oatmeal with blueberries in it and some walnuts. What we'll do after that is we'll do some Egoscue stuff to further balance the body and also get some movement going. We may bounce on the rebounder a little bit, and then we'll do cryo. And then he hits the shower, comes out and preps, and we'll give him some nutrient cocktail before he goes on stage. And then boom.
Boom, through the curtain.
Through the curtain.
But I love that, like, everybody who's listening, even if you don't have a Billy Beck at home, pulling on your limbs and balancing your body, you can wake up, you can do your Egoscue exercises, bounce on your rebounder, oatmeal, walnuts, blueberries, adrenal support. I don't want to oversimplify it either, because Tony does use a lot of cutting edge modalities, things that top athletes, top people have access to. Tony researches it and puts you on it, and you research it, and you guys get access and find inroads into like the best of the best in recovery and in training and all of it, nutrition, you name it. One thing that has been hot this year, let's say, that's come into my awareness, I'm sure you've known about it forever, is this idea of voltage.
Oh yeah, Dr. Jerry Tennant.
Yes.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He is the best doctor I've ever met. And I've met over 1,000 doctors easy. I always thought this. I remember being in 8th grade and learning about the human body and saying like, okay, so there's electrical impulse that's generated in the brain, goes down the spinal cord, goes out every nerve that innervates every cell in your body. That sounds like that electrical impulse is important. And no one ever talks about it. And then it was like 2000, 2001. I saw an article from Dr. Jerry Tennant. And I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. He developed a system that we use a lot. There's foods that are like high voltage foods. And if you were to really just make a really simple principle that works, is foods closest to their natural source would have more voltage in them than foods that are not.
Okay.
And so foods that are processed like
Cheeto.
Like Cheetos, exactly. Like, not to pick on Cheetos. They're delicious to a lot of people, I'm sure. But if you want energy, eating Cheetos is not going to help you. But if you have an apple, that's going to kick a Cheeto's ass in the fight. People pick on like animal proteins right now. You don't want to eat animal proteins from a sick animal, just as you don't want to eat plants that are sick plants, like plants that have a bunch of chemicals on them. Right. So you want to always choose organic foods, not because they have more nutrients, because they don't have more nutrients. If you look at the studies, a carrot that's conventionally raised with pesticides does not have less vitamin A in it than an organic carrot. They're the same. The difference is there's not a stress of removing the pesticides from your body. That's a stressor to your body. You want to have a lot of energy. You want high voltage foods that don't drain your body, don't create an energy link. I've trained hundreds of athletes, and their whole life is that thing. This is Tony's whole life. Everything's specific for that. But if you look at all these biohacking devices that come out, the red light therapy, for instance, is an expensive machine. If you were to simplify what it does, there's a lot of research on it, absolutely effective. But it does two things. It stimulates the mitochondria to make more ATP. And ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is energy. That's voltage? It's voltage. Exactly. Okay. That's what you want. Okay. And so it does that, right? The other thing it does is it's like a low-level metabolic stressor. And through a process called hormesis, you have bad stress and good stress, right? It's called eustress. Yep. And basically, if you don't do anything, you waste away. You don't use it, you lose it. So that red light will actually stress the body a little bit, stress the cells a little bit to make them stronger, which is cool.
A little kick in the pants. Get going.
Yeah. Now people are like, I need to get this red light thing. You know what else does that? But even better, exercise. Resistance training, vitamin E, cardio
exercise
does that. The thing is, if you exercise for the purpose of, I need to lose weight, then I'll be happy, or then I'll wear the bikini, or then I'll go to the pool and take my shirt off. The whole thing is, you will not continue to train that way. You have to have a greater purpose. And that purpose is to tap into your high self, live in a beautiful state, and use exercise. And then you need a long-term vision. This is how you create lasting change. Long-term vision is, I was blessed because I got lucky. I was 12 years old and I was at Giant Eagle grocery store. If you're in Pittsburgh, you know what that is. I opened up the back of Muscle and Fitness. There's a guy named Sean Ray in the cover. I still remember it in my head. And I opened up the back and it said, Bob Del Montague, 78. And this old dude, 78, jacked. And I didn't even know that was a thing. I was like, that can happen? And that instantly became my goal. So even to this day, I want to be a jack Santa Claus. Like, that's my thing. So I was
had
like,
a compelling future.
And so what it was is like, it wasn't about like, I need to get in shape for the summer. I need to get in shape for my wedding. It's like, hey, this is who I'm going to become. Now I'm going to do it because I want to feel good today. I want to be my best today. I want to be able to serve at the highest level today. I want to have a life of no regret. And then that starts to add up one day at a time, one day at a time, one day at a time. And then when you're 80, 90, 100, you're still jacked and kicking ass and loving life. You're not in pain all the time. And so that's really important.
I love that you talked about that. Also because people think about personal trainers and the traditional culture of fitness.
Yeah.
Everybody's promising that these next 10 pounds are going to make the difference of your whole life, or you're working out to fit in a pair of skinny jeans or whatever it may be. And like when I work out with Billy, he'll say to me before every workout, it's one of my favorite things I've ever learned from you, Billy, is you're like, okay, like what's your intention for this workout? And you make it really clear that it's for this purpose other than just looking good, looking fresh. It goes beyond that. And I'm so glad you talked about that too, because people look at Tony and they think he has such incredibly high standards. And he does. He has impossibly high standards. But we don't live by this perfectionism of you can't eat that and you can't eat this and it's keto and paleo.
Well, it's true, Mary B, because, I used to teach that. I was a pain in the ass. And I thought everything had to be perfect because that's the way I ate, right? And then what happens is the people that are teaching this, they have beliefs that if I don't have a six pack or if I don't look good in a bikini, then I'm not enough. And this is what Tone teaches at UPW, right? The two fears every human has is that I'm not enough. And if I'm not enough, I won't be loved. And then in our DNA, we are designed to live in a tribe. We're designed to be able to connect with people. And if we don't feel like we're worthy, that triggers something in us. It triggers a fear. But the way most people exercise is like, hey, I need to lose my stomach, then I'll be enough, and then I can be loved. So the traditional way of fitness and exercise, it's ingraining a deeper pattern, deeper rooted limiting belief that you're not enough. To achieve anything, you got to first believe that it's possible, and you got to be able to feel what it's like to already be there. And you have to know it's possible too. Because I can tell you, every human, people make up these stories like it's my genetics, it's my thyroid, it's my age, right?
Blaming something outside.
I can find a person that has all those challenges that have overcome them. I can tell you. And there's always a way if you're committed, but I've never met anyone that can't lose fat. I never met anyone that can't build muscle. And there's studies on people in their 70s and 80s gaining strength and muscle at the same rate as people in their 20s. And it's not one study, there's multiple studies. And so it's always these stories we tell ourselves, but the new paradigm, the new way to think, it's got to be like, hey, I'm here to serve. I'm already enough. I was put here. We're all put here. If I have a heartbeat, I am worthy. And then I'm here to reinforce that and remind myself every day, because society and television, the media and marketers are always trying to tell you you're not enough and that you got to have this thing if you want to be happy. It's always this if-then thing. None of that's true. And that's how you suffer. And that's got to be the focus of your training. The side effect is you get all those things, but you don't have to be perfect.
That's not your why.
Right. Exactly. It can't be your why.
I love it. Thank you for breaking that down. In addition to limiting beliefs and blaming things outside of themselves and pointing to their genetics or coming up with a myriad of excuses, even as achievers, if you're listening, you're an achiever. So why don't we all have perfect health and loads of energy? What's missing? What's universally holding people back?
It's that time of year. It's kind of funny because I observed it for so many years, but people get motivated and it's great. Go on YouTube, might listen to some Tony. You're like, I'm going to do it. You see some infomercials. You go on Instagram, you see some really fit people are like, I'm going to do it.
This is my year.
This is it. And then they go from the couch, not doing anything, to like pro style workouts. And there's a principle. It's called GPO, gradual progressive overload. And people don't know where to start. It's not inspiring where you start. You start where you're at and add a little bit more. So all you got to do to get results is a little bit more than you're accustomed to and keep going in that direction. So there's a story of Milo of Creton. And Milo is a Greek story, a Greek legend. And Milo, when he was a boy, was given a baby bull. And every day he would walk out as a little kid, take his bowl, hug it, and pick it up. And then as he grew up and the bowl grew up and got bigger and bigger, by the time he was an adult and the bowl was fully grown, he was able to pick up a bowl. But no one came out that never picked up a bowl and picked up a full-grown bowl. It was gradually increased. So that's the story of Milo. And if you always remember that, that's where the body needs to start. So if you're not doing anything, you got to do something very simple. You just got to do a little bit more. And when it comes to exercise, there's really 3 types of exercise. There is cardiovascular conditioning. That's challenging your heart and lungs. There's resistance or strength training, which is challenging your muscles mainly and your circulation. And then there's mobility and structural balance. And that's important too. So you would prevent injuries. You don't want to get too stiff or anything from that. But the balance of those 3, if any 3 of those are missing, your results are going to be limited at best every time.
So you need all 3.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. Like say like your goal is energy. People don't talk about this. They're trying to tell you take some pill, like take this because you can sell the hell out of those things, right? You make a lot of money. But no one's telling you this. This is really simple. So this is just physiology 101. Muscle is the physical location in the body where fat is burned. Inside the muscle is the actual furnace. That is a mitochondria. That is where you produce ATP. ATP is energy. It's voltage, right?
Right.
And so the more muscle you have, the more voltage you have in your body. The higher the voltage, the stronger your immune function. Now, your goal of your body is always one thing. It's survival. It doesn't care what you look like. So a priority of having a 6-pack is not a priority of the body. It's like, oh, your immune system's low? All right, you could get sick. We need to work on that.
Right.
It's never, hey, let's work on your biceps. Your immune system, your voltage has to be high. And when it's high, then you can add muscle. Then you can burn fat. But what's happening with a lot of people is they're not doing resistance training. So if you don't do resistance training, you're going to lose muscle at some point. If you just diet and don't challenge your muscles, you lose muscle. So now you have less voltage, you have less mitochondria. When you lift weights, you build muscle. When you do cardiovascular conditioning that's challenging, you build more mitochondria within that muscle, more factories, not just to burn fat, but to produce ATP. And there is no pill, there's no supplement that does that like that. Even if someone took steroids, you don't build muscle without training. Like people are like, oh, he's a cheater, he took steroids. And I'm like, you should watch them train and eat. They are committed. They're just a little overcommitted, right? But that's really important. So people come out and do too much. So if you haven't been lifting weights, a simple program could be, I create something called the 7-day challenge. We can refer people to that if they haven't done anything. It's a great place to start.
And that's great for everybody. Yeah. You got to start somewhere.
Right.
I used to think that you had to stay in the gym for hours. And now we train and it's like 20 minutes.
Here's the thing. So, when you train professional athletes, that becomes the model because everyone wants to train professional athletes. Now, people are not professional athletes. Professional athletes train, hang out, eat, get massages, go to sleep. Now, if you're an achiever, you are using your brain a lot. That's a stress too. There's a mental stress level. And so what you want to do, if you train for an hour, at the end of that workout, intensely for an hour, your testosterone levels will be low, your cortisol levels will be high. And there's some things you can do to flip-flop that. But what's important is why would you take it to that point? You're only as good as what your body can recover from. So at 20 minutes or 30 minutes in a workout in that window of intense training, testosterone levels are high, cortisol levels are low. So that's the best ratio.
Okay.
From that, when you're done, you feel really good. You're in a peak state.
Right.
You can go crush it the rest of the day.
Right.
Now, if you go to the point where I take a professional athlete, they don't feel great the rest of the day.
Right.
They're not crushing the rest of the day. The whole point of training is to improve every other area of your life. So why would you go to the point where you're now grouchy or you're hungry or you're sore, you don't feel good, and then you're treating your spouse poorly, you're treating your kids poorly, you're treating your coworkers poorly, you're not able to lead your organization or whatever you do. So training a non-athlete is different than training a professional athlete.
It's why maybe you train Tony a little differently than you train Sage and I, for example. And Sage Robbins happened to just walk in the room. Hi, everyone.
First of all, I just want to start by saying these are two of my dearest and most beloved friends on the planet, Billy, Beck, and Mary B. I thought I'd just jump in and share my own experience. Over this last year, I had some health challenges, and I had to take a look at myself and do an inventory of what I wasn't doing. And I had prayer and meditation down pat, but I really didn't have an exercise structure. And I might have done things spontaneously at times, but I had no consistency. And Billy brought training to life for me, and you made it fun. And, you know, our life is really big, and we're traveling on many different time zones and so forth. And my story at that time was I couldn't fit a consistent workout schedule in. And Billy came up with a system called micro workouts. And what's so amazing is through working out, like, you know, if I felt I didn't have time, my commitment was if Billy ever said, hey, do you want to work out? I'll always say yes. And so after this past year of saying yes, he's completely just revolutionized my body. And I can't believe the strength that I'm gaining. I call them my baby muscles. They're not quite there yet. But what's so beautiful is just through his insight and brilliance, and as well just having a structure that I was able to adapt and fit into my world, I've had consistency. And with that consistency, you know, I used to go up to the gym, and in my mind, I'd be thinking like, oh, I have to go work out. And now I look forward to it because it's about my own well-being. It's about revitalizing my health. I remember as a younger woman, you know, I used to always want to exercise, and I'd be trying to lose 5 or 10 pounds, but it was an outside game at that time. And at this stage, there's no relevance to that. It's all just about, you know, me being the best self that I can be. And Billy, Beck, thank you, because I would never be where I am today without him. And anyways, I just wanted to pop in and say hello and share my quick testimony because it's so dear to me. And besides, I have the privilege to travel the world with these two. And they're our chosen family and my most beloved friends. So anyways, thank you. And I hope you guys are enjoying this, and God bless.
Sage Robbins, ladies and gentlemen.
Da, 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 da.
Baby biceps and all.
She's always flexing.
She is always flexing, isn't she? Okay, Billy, there's a lot of misperceptions and things that people are still believing that's like, that's not really true anymore. What other things would you say are like myths that people are still living by and you'd like to bust for us today?
Just because of the time of year, I think it'd be really important to talk about no pain, no gain. Most people watch Rocky IV and they see Sylvester Stallone running up a mountain in the snow with a log on his back, and they're like, oh, that's how I have to train. And it's way too much for them. So the goal is to challenge the body. That's important, because if you don't challenge it, it won't change. But you want to stimulate. It, not annihilate it. So you got to know where you're at. So if you haven't been doing anything, you just got to do a little bit and gradually progress from that. And each workout should be challenging. And there's an acronym. I taught you this, the BOSS principle.
I love it.
Yeah,
Tell the bosses.
Like, how do you know if your workout's working? So BOSS, like BOSS, the first thing is if any of these things are happening, that means the body's being challenged to a point. So B stands for burning. So if you're building up that burning sensation, something good's happening. You're producing more nitric oxide, something metabolically will change and good things will occur.
Okay.
Makes you healthier too. And then the O is out of breath. If you're out of breath, you're challenging your lungs.
That's a good thing if you're a little winded.
Exactly. You should be. You shouldn't be at the point where you're vomiting or anything like that. But hey, more power to you.
Heavy breathing.
Yep. And then S would be the sweat. So if you're sweating, that means you're challenging your body point. You're flexing enough muscles are contracting. Byproduct is heat. And then to cool your body down, you start to sweat. And then the last S is struggle. You got to struggle a little bit. If you're just like 9, 10, and it's like it was easy breezy.
Nope.
Nothing's happening.
What else? How about a few simple tips that people can implement right now?
When I work with clients, like I do all these lab tests and everything, and what I'm trying to roll out is trial and error. And so I'm trying to make it very specific to them so they see results as quickly as possible and to give them certainty, right? But say you didn't have any of that stuff. And honestly, you don't need all that stuff. There's some things that you just know work. So there's like core principles that work for every human being. If you're in the species and you have a heartbeat, this works. The first thing is you got to drink enough water. And if you're drinking things with calories in them other than protein shakes, it's probably not a good choice. You would drink half your body weight in ounces of water per day. So a 200-pound person would drink 100 ounces of water today, which for international people, that's about 3 liters. And that would be the goal. And ideally,
just start with water.
Yeah, and
everybody could do that.
Everyone overcomplicates stuff. So You want clean water. You don't need like this crazy whole house system. Like that's fine if you want it. I don't want to tell you not to get it, but I'm just saying like, just keep it really simple. Drink water. They're like, what about alkaline water? What about red water? Get clean water.
Water.
Yeah. Drink enough water. Next step is super simple. People always want like the perfect diet. Eat foods closest to their natural source. So eat whole foods, avoid processed foods.
Got it.
It's very simple. And I'll give you an example, like grapes. And you ask this question. Here's your test. You don't need like a list of food. Just like hold the food up. Like you have grapes. And it says, where does this come from? And if it takes you more than 5 seconds to figure it out, or if you have to read the label, it's not a good choice. And then from that, you want to create a routine. And the routine is like, how can you automate it? If you look at the research on willpower, self-control, and decision-making from Roy Baumeister at Florida State University, and what he found was if you looked at high performers, low performers, what was the difference? Blood sugar levels, actually, blood sugar regulation, and the amount of decisions you make. So if your blood sugar levels drop, you tend to make terrible decisions. You don't need 40 years of research to know that. I think we've all been there. Get a little hangry.
Billy.
Yeah.
You get a little hangry.
I get a little hangry. It's coming out now. Oh, everyone knows. Yep, it's true. But blood sugar levels are a big thing. And the other thing they found was you only have so many decisions you can make in a day before self-control goes down. I had a football coach. He says, nothing good happens after 11 p.m. And so we had a curfew. And it's true. Like, think about all the regrets people have in their life. So like what I usually do is I have, okay, we're going to eat within a 12-hour period. So we're going to fuel our body in a 12-hour period. We're going to fast for a 12-hour period so our digestion can occur. And so our body can repair and rebuild. During the 12-hour period of fueling, you're going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner and one snack. The way I do it is I train in the morning. I have my protein shake, and then I put blueberries and broccoli sprouts in it. Broccoli sprouts are like a super, super food. Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she's incredible the way she does her presentations on broccoli sprouts. I read the research before I saw her presentation, and it was not fun to do. Like I had a headache. It took me weeks. And then she summarized it like in 45 minutes and just knocked it out of the park. So if you don't want to eat broccoli sprouts, watch her video and then you'll want to. Like I grow them in my house.
We are stinky little devils, but they're good for you.
Turn off the bad genes, turn on good genes.
There you go.
If you don't want to have cancer, a good chance of it, this gives you a few bonus points. So you're going to be better protected. I say I have my shake first thing in the morning just because I have a lot of nutrients in it. I want to make sure I get those things. And then about 3 hours later, I have my breakfast, which would be real food. And then about 3-4 hours later, I have my next meal. Then 3-4 hours of my next meal. Then I'm done eating. And so if I have my shake at 9 a.m., I'm done eating by 9 p.m.
Got it.
And so it's a 12-12.
Okay.
And what that does, it does a couple of things. Intermittent fasting, if you look at the research with weight loss and intermittent fasting, there was a really interesting study, a 1-year study done. I think it was published in the Journal of International Society of Sports Nutrition. And what they found was they had someone ingest, I'll give you hypothetical numbers, but they had the same amount of food, say 2,000 calories at any time of the day or within an 8-hour window, I believe it was. And they did this for a year. And at the end of the year, they had the same results. So What's more important, the overall amount of food you eat or what time of day you eat? Right now, that's a trend. And I think there's a behavioral aspect to it. I think there's value in having some rules and automating it and starting with 12 hours and then seeing how that goes. Just saying like, this is when I eat. What happens is people eat reactively. They're like, oh, I'm hungry, I should eat. But most of the time when we eat, we're not actually physically hungry. We're emotionally hungry. And so we want to produce a little dopamine or something like that. And so we challenge someone. We're just trained to eat something, munch on something when we watch television. And so by establishing these decisions, like making a decision, like this is when I eat, this is how I eat, and this is what I eat, and then just sticking by that, what it does, it carries over to other things. When you make decisions, you make a promise to yourself and you keep it, you start to expand your beliefs about the type of person you are. But when you make a promise to yourself and you don't keep it, your subconscious mind starts to think less of you. And really a little piece of you dies every time you say, hey, I'm going to do it, and you don't do it. That's a serious thing. You got to take that serious. Like any promise that comes from you, words you speak, that's what integrity is. And it's about having integrity with yourself, not with other people. Who cares about other people, right? Not in a mean way, but like you're promising yourself this thing. Like
Right.
do it then.
Keep your
but
promises.
don't just talk. Like too many people just say things, but they don't mean it.
True. We got to keep our promises to ourselves. What about, Billy, if someone's like ready to commit? They're like, okay, I've made the decision. I'm ready to commit to this. Give our listeners here a challenge, something that they can be their best version of themselves. They're ready to do it. They're committed. What do they do? What do you got for them?
I love it. I created this little thing called a 7-day challenge for people to start. And it's just the core habits of developing the rituals of like, these are the things you need to do. Every human needs to do if they want to have a lot of energy, vitality, they want to be lean and feel good. And it works for everyone. And then I created another program. I trained The Rock for a long time, and they would always ask me for his program. And I'm like, you will die if you do his program. He's a machine. So I made a program just for beginners that will take you to beginner to intermediate, or even maybe advanced if you push yourself. But it's progressive overload, right? So you're going to start with something simple and gradually increase your volume and workload over a period of 12 weeks. And it's free.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I love that. So do the 7-day challenge from Billy. We'll put it up on our website. Anybody can do it. Billy, thank you for joining us.
It's an honor and a privilege.
That was Billy Beck and Mary Buckheit talking about how Tony Robbins stays in peak physical health. To take a closer look at some of the resources they refer to during this interview, go to www.tonyrobbins.com/Billy Beck. The Tony Robbins podcast is directed by Tony Robbins and produced by the Tony Robbins editorial team, with audio editing and sound design by Jeremy Enns. Copyright Robbins Research International.